Can you see that clearly?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
awesome.
Great. If you can move forward a couple of slides, yeah. So we'll just, Lee, if you want to revisit the protocols, then we'll hop on our agenda.
Yeah, so y'all, we have just a few class rules. We ask you to please mute your speaker unless you are speaking, just to keep the noise down. Keep your camera on except for Drew and Waukesha, a few people that have special dispensation. Put your comments and your questions in the chat box, please, anytime. Staff is keeping up with that. Please be patient with any technical challenges that we have. And if you need to leave early, please message Melinda via the chat box. We'd appreciate that. We assume everyone is going to follow these protocols unless they speak up right now.
Okay, so today we have a really full agenda. And so if we start going too fast, just speak up and let us know to slow down. But we're going to, the plan for today's meeting, we're going to start by reviewing and approving the March minutes. Then we will have some team members to share the program updates, and those will be very brief because you received a written update in your packet. You may recall in our March meeting that we began introducing you to Durham Pre-K support team members from various of our partner agencies as well as from CCSA. The last meeting we met the technical assistance team from CCSA and from Durham's Partnership for Children. They support classrooms to meet quality standards and follow best practices. Today, we're going to introduce the team members from CCSA's Family Support Department who work with our referral program. There are other folks that we'll introduce in future meetings, but they will join us in a little bit for their introductions. They support, in Durham Pre-K, they support families during the application process and also with a variety of needs. You may recall that in Durham Pre-K, because it's a large collaborative with various agencies, we have very few staff members that work 100% in this project. We have our FTE spread across numerous areas to try to leverage and maximize resources. So all the folks you meet, very few of them work just in Durham Pre-K. As the rest of our meeting, we'll talk in depth about the budget and about site reimbursements for next year. We're going to make some decisions around that for the new school year, and we'll also talk about parent fees. And then we'll finish our voting items by talking about licensing requirements for Durham Pre-K sites. And that will be the last of our voting categories unless you guys add something. And then we'll close out by talking about the governance membership and introduce you to the new governance portal. So that kind of covers our meeting for today. So next slide. So you received the March 2022 notes a few weeks ago and again this week in the packet for today's meeting. So if anybody has any revisions to those or anything, Lee will need to call for a vote.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone have a revision they'd like to bring to our attention? Could we have a motion to approve the notes?
I'll move to approve the notes.
Thank you, Sharon. We have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Michael. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much.
Dr. Hardy raised her hand. Was that part of your vote, Nakia? I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yes, it was in reference to the vote.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to make sure you didn't have a question. Thanks. Okay, Katie, you want to go? So we're gonna, you received a handout with the updates for Durham Pre-K. We're gonna ask Jenna to, our Durham Pre-K manager, to review some of the highlights from that you received.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to lift a few things out of the report that you received. So as of yesterday, we had 1,235 applications in progress. very exciting. We're continuing to see growth in those numbers every week. Currently, we have 369 subscribers to our text platform, which you can subscribe to if you text DPK to 59925. We're always looking for ways to just increase communication and engagement with folks. We had 52 application appointments conducted in April. The Durham Pre-K Information Desk has been incredibly busy. Hats off to everyone communicating with families. They had a combined total of over 1,000 contacts with families, 1,096 inquiries altogether that they responded to via email and phone. And they also made 1,060 contacts, proactive contacts with families regarding their applications and collecting missing documents and things of that nature. What else? We wanted to remind everyone that our last roll up and enroll is Saturday, June 4th from 10 to 1 at Leathers Meacham. Providers will be in attendance and we're really looking forward to that. All the other ones have been held at our offices at Briggs, so we're also just really excited to be at another location. Our website continues to be doing really well, increased since last year across the board. We had 9,172 page views from 3,600 viewers in April alone, and almost 85% of those were new users, so that's exciting. Our social media accounts have also seen over a 30% increase in followers this fiscal year. All very exciting. And if you haven't checked out our Facebook page recently, please look at it. We are doing a Meet the Team campaign, which is doing really well. And we're seeing increased engagement on that, which is very exciting. And I think that's about all that I had for you today.
Okay, and just for your information, the this update from May was also shared with the Board of County Commissioners and with the Superintendent of Schools, just as our regular update that we try to do covering each area of the program. So there's a lot of data in there, and just if you find that you have any question about anything, feel free to let us know. Reach out and we're always happy to talk about what's going on. So. Thank you, Jenna. So I'm going to pass it to Monty Griggs. We can go to the next slide, Katie. And Monty's going to give you an update around the quality subcommittee.
Good morning, everyone. At the end of April, we had a quality subcommittee meeting. We always have great discussion at this meeting, and so I'm going to start off by saying anybody who would like to join the quality subcommittee, I'm going to put it right up front. Anybody who would like to join the quality subcommittee, we are happy to have new members. Also, if you know somebody who is not on governance, who you think would be great to be part of this committee, please let us know and encourage them to attend. Like I said, we always have really great discussions. This is the committee that put together the initial draft of the equity plan. And so we discuss a wide range of topics related to quality. And so encourage anybody who wants to join us. At this meeting, we provided the committee with updates around the application, just like Jenna had just provided with to you. We also discussed professional development alignment. There's some new requirements coming down from the state around professional development. And so we discussed those requirements and we discussed how it would impact our Durham Pre-K and NC Pre-K planning and professional development calendar, and how we're working to make sure that we align our professional development with these new requirements. Kelly, who came to the last governance, Kelly Epley, who came to the last governance meeting and presented on the RAP paper, also presented the same information to the quality subcommittee at our last meeting. And that took us through our whole time together. And so, again, our next quality subcommittee meeting is going to be June 2nd from 12 to 2. And happy to have anybody who would like to join us do so. Any questions about the quality subcommittee? We are very happy today to have our family support referral team members with us. The Durham Pre-K work takes a village, takes a lot of people, and the referral team, family support referral team, is one of our backbone groups that really helps with our interactions with families. They take a lot of the calls that come in about Durham Pre-K. They answer a lot of questions. They help a lot of families fill out and complete their applications. So they're really an essential part of the work that we're doing. And so glad they can join us today so we can introduce them to you. I'm going to turn this over to Christy Tallheimer, who's the director of Child Care Referral Program, and who is the person this past year who has really taken the lead on our online application, making sure it's working properly, and working with the community partners so they have training and professional development on how to use the system. So really appreciate all the work she's done on that this year, along with leading her team in the support for families. So Christy, I'm going to turn it over to you if you can introduce your team to us.
Good morning. Thank you, Monty. Yes, we are the folks who are on the front end of talking with families throughout the application process, making sure that it goes smoothly as possible and that all of their questions are answered. And so I will, I don't know who is next in the screen, but I do, okay, thank you. I do know, I don't believe Kathy is here with us. I think she's out today. She had a plan. I'm going to scroll down and see who actually is signed in. Okay, so Cecilia is our admin assistant, and Cecilia is here, I believe. Actually, she was helping a parent just before we got on here, so she might actually be on the phone right now with someone. So I'll move on to Anna.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Ana Claros, the Child Care Referral Manager here, and happy to be here. I'll meet you all.
So Anna's been helping with childcare, with the DPK application process for many years now. So she is definitely in the know of how to do that. And I think Kathy is so if Kathy, are you here, Kathy? She didn't sign in. Okay, so Kathy is our family support coordinator, and she is the person that most people speak to when they call the 1-833 number at the information desk. So she speaks with most everyone who has an application in our system. And yes, thank you, Anna. So the next slide, I believe, is introducing Adriana, and she is on board here.
Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody can hear me.
Yes.
I'm happy to get to see everybody that was working with the pre-K, and this is my first year, so it's been wonderful, challenging, and I love the team that is been guiding me through this.
Thank you, Adriana.
Yeah, Adriana is one of our newer team members, and then Katia as well. I think she's also helping a family. I see her. No. Cecilia just joined in. I see that she just connected. So Cecilia, would you like to say good morning, introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, good morning. My name is Cecilia. I'm a bilingual administrative assistant for the Family Support Department. I had been with CCSA for a little over 7 years, and I have just graduated from, I just completed my bachelor's. So it's been great to be here because I have been able to go to school and continue my education.
Yes, yeah, Cecilia's been around quite a long time as we've been going through the growth of the DPK project. And then I see Maria is also signed in.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Maria. I'm also a childcare referral counselor, and I have been at CCSA for 2.5 years, right almost at 3. And I have been with pre-K for a good amount of years in Durham since I was in Head Start as well.
Yes, Maria is a great help to families who are trying to make sure they have the right documents in our application system. So, and I think that was all of our counselors who will be here today. We have one other who is out for an extended leave, and but we really do appreciate the opportunity to work with the program and just for you to meet the team who is behind all the numbers.
Thank you so much, Christy. You know, this team is so vital to our service to families. And as I mentioned a little bit before you started introducing, we have the opportunity to have folks work in DPK, and we flex time based on the high demand periods for Durham Pre-K. And the 800 number has been crazy busy for Durham Pre-K, and the team supports those calls because we want families to get served quickly and efficiently. And they all have done a great job to try to be responsive to families, and we appreciate all of you. Thanks.
Thank you, Linda. So I think we're going to sign out because we're going to have to go and answer the phone a little bit more.
Yeah, this is our peak time. So but anybody's welcome to stay, but I know that it is kind of crazy. So thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, Katie, if you'll go to the next one. Yeah, and we'll remind everybody that in future meetings, we will carve out time in every meeting to go through the team members from not just CCSA, but a variety of agencies. Like last month, we were joined by technical assistance from the Durham's Partnership. But we feel like it's really important to just kind of see all the people who are contributing. So we're going to move on to the meat of our agenda. Does anybody have any questions or anything before we get started with that? Okay, so this is just a reminder for this current school year. Our budget, the funding allocation was a little over $4 million, and you'll recall that we divide those funds into instructional services, which are the dollars that support the children directly in the classrooms, and then in the management side, which includes our subcontract with Durham's Partnership for Children, as well as all the folks that do the work to try to drive the bus, so to speak. For this current fiscal year, about 22% of the budget is in that administrative management. And for our future planning, after a lot of analysis, we believe that moving forward in the next few years, the growth demands and what we've learned about what's needed to support this work, most likely that percent will need to move to around 28%, between 28 and 30% of the overall budget. Those funds support technical assistance and support all of the application processing, the family support services, and we braid those funds to try to meet the needs of the program completely. I saw Beth's, I believe it was Beth, put something in the chat about I'm not able to see the chat. Can somebody,
I was just asking if
sorry,
you
Beth.
again what the allocation, if that $4 million, how much of that's county funds? Are there federal pieces of funding? Is any of that? Yeah.
So this money that I'm talking about, thanks for asking. This is the local investment from Durham County. Now, you'll remember that we braid funding. And actually, I'm glad you asked that because at a future meeting, we will try to capture all of the funds that are supporting preschool. What we'll do is we'll try to present to you all the braided funding approximations of spending, because this is only Durham County's investment. This does not include the state NC pre-K dollars. It does not include Head Start dollars, does not include the Title I funds and other funds that Durham Public Schools uses. This is just the local, the local investment. I see, Marcia, you raised your hand.
Yeah, and you actually answered it. I was going to say that there are federal dollars, as Beth was asking, with NC pre-K that come first, and we don't use these dollars, as you said, last dollars.
Yeah, we always, you guys get, I'm sure you get tired of hearing me say Durham County money spent last. I say that to the staff all the time. We always want to leverage those funds, bring in as many dollars as possible, and always spend the local dollars at the very last, whenever possible, or to fill gaps, to enhance. We do have some children's seats that are fully paid with local dollars, but the majority of our seats are braided. So, so in this, that's the current budget. And, Durham really has, you'll remember that Durham's pledged to develop incrementally a universal access to public preschool. And for planning purposes, our figures estimate we have a target of 75% of the 4-year-old census in Durham. And in 2021, that would be at around 3,343 seats. We're at about 46% of that at this time. And it is, it is a long-term goal. And we know that we use that 75% figure as a planning figure. And over time, we will assess in the community what the actual figure should be based on demand and the need. This current school year, we're serving across all programs, not just with this, obviously not just with this local money, but Title I, Exceptional Children, Head Start, NC Pre-K. We're serving around 1,516 children this school year. In that group of children, around 68% of those children come from families who are living at or below 200% of federal poverty. So we're in our budgeting, we're always conscious of trying to assess, what the full needs of children and families are, so that we can be sure that we're planning appropriately. What we hope for in our budget request is that there would be at least between a 5 and 7% growth in seat numbers each year, which is a very modest growth amount, but we believe is achievable based on the current early childhood system. You'll recall that with the pandemic, we did have to level off and take a pause, and we stalled our growth, obviously, during the pandemic. And so it's a process to continue our growth. Katie, can you move to the next slide? So just really, we've been over this before in previous meetings. I'm just giving you some context for our later discussion today. So just to remind you that for this current upcoming budget cycle, we did ask for an increase either from local dollars, ongoing recurring dollars, and or consideration in ARPA for about 1.14 million in an increase. We are very excited that right now we're in the county manager's recommended budget for an increase. And we're optimistic that that will come through, not necessarily at this amount. This was what we asked for in consideration of the budget. We submitted, the fund increase, really looking at the prioritizing an increase in seats, also feeling like we needed to pilot activities to support Durham Pre-K's equity plan. which you'll recall the equity plan has quite a number of components that really assess the barriers to participation, of which there are many, some of which is the fact that the program is a 6.5-hour day and some families need more assistance with wrap care. There's also barriers around transportation. And then there are other barriers also. The equity plan is comprehensive, and I encourage you to refresh your memory around all the components of it. But in submitting our budget request, we always want to keep the equity plan front and center. And you'll remember that any dollars we get, our funding model requires a braiding of resources from those multiple funding streams. So if you'll go to the next slide, Katie. So we're going to talk about our reimbursement rate, and this is a key item for your consideration for next school year. And I'm going to introduce Joy Turner. Katie, if you'll go to the next slide. Joy is our Director of Data and Provider Relations. You met her at the beginning of our meeting. And she's put together some numbers to contextualize our discussion of the consideration of whether or not to increase rates for next year. So I'm going to turn it over to Joy.
Thanks, Linda. Katie, you can go to the next slide. The chart that I put together here shows a couple of different rates for 4-year-olds in 5-star Durham centers. So for those of you who don't know, the state rates are different depending on the age of the child, the star rating, and the county of the program, and whether it's a center or a home. So for all of these, I'm talking about 4-year-olds in 5-star Durham centers because that's the population we're looking at for Durham pre-K. So current market rates, which are the maximum reimbursement rates for subsidized childcare, were last updated in 2018, and those rates were based on a 2015 market rate study. So at this point, those rates are quite dated, and that current market rate for 4-year-olds in 5-star centers in Durham is currently $1,077 per month based on that 2015 study. But of course, since then, private tuition rates have continued to rise. So the middle two numbers there in the orange and the blue are the median and the average tuition rate for private pay parents as of April of this year. So a median of 1,100 and an average of 1,151. In 2017, a market rate study was completed, but not implemented by the legislature. And that 2017 market rate study, suggested that 1156 would be the market rate in 2017. And so, however, that was not implemented by the legislature. So we are still using the 1,077 rate that came from the 2015 study. You can go to the next slide. So this chart shows the distribution of private tuition rates for 4-year-olds in Durham County. So you can see that the range is from 680 as a low to a high of 1,720. The current market rate, as I said, is 1077. Most centers fall at or above this rate, so that tall part in the middle, that's right around and right above the 1077 rate. And only 30% of providers have tuition that is below the current market rate. So the vast majority of providers in Durham County are above the current market rate. Next slide. And so on this chart, you can see I put the pre-K rates in with the market rate as well as the average tuition, so you can see how they compare. So the market rate is in green at 1077. The NC pre-K rate is 944. The Durham pre-K rate is at 1250, and there's the average tuition of 1151. So you can see the average tuition of private pay 4-year-old care in Durham is fast approaching the current Durham pre-K reimbursement rate of 1250. And although Durham Pre-K does only cover a 6.5-hour day, whereas average private pay tuition covers more than that, it is important to remember that Durham Pre-K has higher standards than traditional 5-star childcare, such as requiring teachers to be paid on the Durham Public Schools salary scale, requiring assistants to be paid at least $15 an hour, additional professional development of teachers, assistants, and directors, and other increased quality in the classroom, all of which cost more for the program. You know, the gap is narrowing there between the Durham Pre-K rate and the private tuition rate. But any questions about any of these charts?
So I know Marcia pointed out in the chat about the fact that it's a legislative session. And we feel free to advocate for the legislature to consider changing the reimbursement rate for child care subsidy, because we know that the rate being so antiquated and the current steady increase in inflation is obviously creating a major strain on the early childhood system across our state.
So I think you can go to the next slide.
Yeah, so what we wanted to talk about when we originally calculated asking for an increase in funding, you know, we've had the same reimbursement rate for Durham Pre-K since the beginning. So you'll recall that for a BK certified classroom, we reimburse at $12.50 per child per month. And if the teacher doesn't yet have the BK, we reimburse at $1,200 per month per child. And that was a pretty innovative rate when we began this program. But as you can see from the information that Joyce shared, it is, and of course, in our knowledge of just what's happening with inflation, we've become very concerned that the rate is not adequate. In our budgeting in our projections, we had worked to try to do a 6% increase in the rate to $13.25 in terms of for planning purposes. But you know, based on budget, we scaled back to ask you to look at and consider potentially a 4% increase to $1,300. But we wanted to have a discussion about whether or not you felt that it was time to increase rates for next school year. The other funding that sites get, you'll recall, is we do also pay some funds for what we call the teacher payments. Basically, the site gets an additional payment that's based on the experience level of the teacher and where the teacher falls on the pay scale. And so they get a portion, a small payment each month to support the fact that we require the teacher to be paid on the Durham Public Schools scale. That's not based on a per child rate, that's based on the actual experience and salary of the teacher in that classroom. And if the teacher changes, then that amount changes also based on because it's based on the salary of the teacher. So we do have our per child rate that we pay, and then we do pay a small supplement to the site to assure that the teacher's salary is supported. We don't want sites to select teachers based on their experience worried about their budgets. We want them to hire the most experienced teacher they can find. And so we do also support them in that way. Any questions about the rate? Any thoughts folks want to share? It's, you know, it is a big decision because it does affect how many children we can serve if we look at increasing rates.
I can throw a comment out, which is that I feel like if Kathy were here, she would remind us of how important it is to pay our teachers as well as we possibly can. And I know everybody is aware of the difference that the quality of the instruction that we make, that we offer has. It's really hard to think about trading off seats, but if we don't maintain quality, we're lost. So that's a thought.
Just for clarification, we did ask for an increase in the budget, and so we will have new seats regardless of whether we increase the reimbursement rate. We believe we will be getting an increase, and so we will have new seats, but it will just be fewer if we increase the rate. I saw Ben put in the chat about that, about it being hard not to think about an increase during these times.
Who would like to say anything in favor of increasing? Would like to say anything in favor of not increasing? Any thoughts?
The group is very quiet today. I've never known y'all to be so quiet.
Yeah, this is stumped
This
them.
is a little strange.
I'll throw something out too. I mean, I think, I think pre-K has been about universal access, but it's also been about quality and supporting the providers. So that's where I think I'm coming from there. I think we need to build capacity, but that is something we're doing over time. It sounds like too. So, but considering what we're facing today and what these providers are facing and the teachers, these supplements are, probably getting lost in a week's of gas, in some ways. I mean, it's just, that's why I think I put out there. It seems hard for me not to consider whether it's 4% or 6%, that I think that can be massaged out, but it just seems hard not to. I mean, I would definitely favor some type of a rate increase.
I would agree with Ben. I think we, given the shortage in the childcare workforce and the very real possibility that if Congress doesn't act, we may not be seeing these operational supports come next April if that emergency federal support runs out. I think we are at a place where we need to be building up and supporting that infrastructure. I think my original pause was I'm sitting over here weighing, looking at the number of applicants you have right now, the number of seats we currently have available, and knowing that it looks like, as more vaccines become available to younger children, we'll probably begin to see more of that resurgence of folks who are seeking seats, right? And I hear from the other side from parents who are, really concerned about will the child care be there, but I think we have to make sure that the providers will be there too, right? And so I think that as long as we continue to try to build those seats at the same time, I don't see how we couldn't do this right now, especially if Congress fails to act.
Yeah, I completely agree with Ben and Beth, and also think that we need to be thinking about this as an equity issue when we think about who our workforce is. And that's another reason why this is so important to provide an increase for the staff.
Yeah, I also just drawing a line between the workforce, the quality, and what that is for the student. Think about that airplane moment where you say, put the oxygen on yourself first before you take care of your kids. So this is an oxygen moment for me. So I definitely support the increase.
Would anyone like to make a motion relative to this concept?
I would be happy to make a motion in support of the proposed increase, 4% rate increase to $1,300 per child per month.
Second.
Thank you, Anna.
I'll second the motion.
Who was that? Was that Drew?
It's Ben.
That was Ben.
Ben, sorry. Hey, Ben, thank you.
Problem.
Ben seconded. Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. Let's see. Any opposed? Staff, I don't see anyone opposed. I believe it's unanimous. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate that. And, if we were to get new information and find out about new sources, at some point later, we may come back to you to consider, an additional increase, but being able to enter into contract with sites with a 4% rate increase, shows our good faith effort to try to build their capacity and meet their needs. So we appreciate that very much. So we're actually amazingly running 5 minutes ahead. And Katie, you can move the slide forward. We're actually at our break. We committed to taking a break every hour, and we can go ahead and take the break if you want to, or we can talk about parent fees and then take a break. But probably it's a bigger issue, so we might want to consider going ahead and taking the break. What's your pleasure?
Let somebody speak up if you do not want to take the break. All right, we're going to take a break. We're taking a 5-minute break, which means we are coming back together at 10:26. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody. Okay, we're going to go into a really important topic here, so I'm glad everyone is refreshed and focused. Linda, let's hear about it.
Okay, Katie, if you can advance the slide. Thank you. So you'll recall that this body voted as a result of the pandemic for school year 21 and school year 22, our current school year, to suspend our parent fees for Durham pre-K. So you'll probably remember that there are no parent fees associated with NC pre-K seats, nor with Head Start seats, nor with Title I or most Durham public school seats. Those funding sources have income eligibility restrictions. They're not universally available to all families. So for Durham pre-K, as we have pursued our braided funding model, we have seats that are open to everyone regardless of income. And we do prioritize children and families from less resourced families. So we don't, we make sure we prioritize families with greater income needs, but we do accept all children, and our goal is to have a truly universal program. So you set guidelines around parent fees, which we'll talk about in just a minute, but for the last 2 school years, we have not collected a parent fee. The experience of the pandemic and suspending the parent fees has actually taught us quite a bit. And what I mean by that is we learned and experienced some families who had initially, before we suspended the parent fee, through the application and seating process where families were offered a placement in public preschool, there were a number of families that turned down that opportunity. And what we learned through the last 2 years of suspending our fees is that many families turned down the program because of the associated costs. When they had a parent fee, they did turn it down, and we'll talk more about that. But for the past 2 years, we've had a suspended fee. Each school year, you have to vote, and under our current guidelines, each school year you have to vote as to whether or not you want us to enforce, and us to apply the parent fees. You'll go to the next slide, Katie. So our current parent fee policy, you remember in our initial opening of Durham pre-K, we actually assessed a parent fee at a lower income level, but we revised it from our lessons learned prior to the pandemic. We revised it so that our current parent fee policy charges parents who are at or above the 400% of federal poverty level. They are assigned a parent fee that is 4% of their gross monthly income. So during the pandemic, when we suspended those fees, we still collected income information, and we still assessed the fee privately, internally, so that we could keep up with it for data purposes. We also, not to create a hassle for families, but in assessing which seats families are eligible for, we have to collect their income information anyway. Because, like I said before, some seat types have income restrictions. So for the current school year, if we had been charging parent fees, there would have been 37 families who would have paid a parent fee based on their participation in the program. As you can see there in the slide, the range of the parent fee would have been close to $200 a month and close to $1,000 per month in terms of the range, and the median was close to $400 a month. You'll recall that this program is a 6.5-hour day, and the parent fee of 4% of gross monthly income is typically lower than they would be paying for private childcare. However, this is a 6.5-hour day, whereas when they're in the private marketplace, typically they have access to more than 6.5 hours of care for their fee. And this is in addition to talking about our reimbursement rate, the data that Joy shared with you earlier is also relevant when we think about parent fees and what tuition is in our community. So that's the other reason why we wanted to share that information with you. Katie, can you go to the next slide? So just for some more context, for this school year 22, you've seen this slide before in an earlier governance meeting. We did an analysis of the folks who accepted their seat to just see what our income levels look like for participants. And you can see that the majority of our families do not need a parent fee. We only have 9% of our families who are currently enrolled that would, that would have had a parent fee. Now remember, the parent fee is only for a child that didn't qualify for NC Pre-K or Head Start because those programs don't have a parent fee associated. So this means that the parent fees collected, if any, those funds go toward your local investment in seats. So those funds, if collected, go towards supporting the budget. You can go to the next slide, Katie. So this is a dense slide, and really the point of it is just to say to you that for last school year and the upcoming school year, and you can see the asterisks there in the chart where this only reviewed 568 the current school year applications so far. This just sort of gives you a picture of what it's looking like. Right now in the current application process, when it was at 568, which it's really about double that now, we were at potentially 22% of applicants that may have been eligible to pay a parent fee. The thing to know is that children receive a screening as part of their application process. And if they screen with a need that makes them eligible for another program also, then that parent fee would not apply. So these numbers are not real. They're just part of our estimates at this time. So I think a key thing is that we know for our current school year that the income range from families ranges from 0 income to 298,000 a year. So that's the range. The median income, though, for families who've applied in the current school year, for the active school year now, not for next year, the median income was $33,000 per year in salary. So we are meeting our goal of reaching deeply into families who may need assistance based on their income. Okay, next slide. So thinking about this upcoming school year as you consider what to do in regards to parent fees, we in budgeting and based on just analysis, we are very aware that some families decline their seat once they are given information about what their parent fee will be. It is a very significant phenomenon. So we estimate low when we're looking at our budget. So right now we were projecting that about 30 families who accept will owe a parent fee next year. So we're budgeting approximately $11,700 a month in revenue based on that average parent fee of $390 a month. So you can see that it is a very small portion of the overall budget. However, it is part of the framework of the program that you've built. The $111,700 that we would collect would directly go into supporting the program. You know, this was a really big decision when you decided to defer the fees, and the pandemic obviously was a very unusual situation. But because of all the lessons learned and because of what we know about the emerging issues coming out of the pandemic, we felt that it was important for you to have a discussion about what you want to do this coming school year. If you choose not to do anything, then the fees will start back up because that is part of your policy, and your deferral was time limited that you voted on. Does anybody have any questions? Let's see. So Kate was asking about the 400% of FPL for a family of 4. Katie, can you go back to the previous slide? So on the left in the income categories, we did try to on a family of 4, 400% is a family of 4, 111 equal to or greater than $111,000 a year is 400% of the federal poverty level for a family of 4. But just as you're thinking about it, that left-hand side has the example income level for a family of 4 for your review. So I'll turn it over to you. We chose as a staff not to make a recommendation. We felt like it was really important that you think about, you know, the data and make a decision. We see pros to deferring the parent fee. We see pros to keeping it. You know, it's one of those things that I think we have to assess based on what we feel is best in the community.
And I just think it's interesting that you know, of course we're making projections here, and I think it's interesting that in that slide we just came from, the at or above 400% is the only category where there are more applications. And I don't, you know, of course that could mean persons are heading back into the office more so. And if that were the case, they may need more than the, you know, then they may need a full day and may decline. So I'm just trying to you know, figure out what these numbers really mean. All I can do is
Yeah, it's
speculate.
hard because you're right when you look at it this way, but again, only these numbers are based on about half of the applications that were received so far for school year 22-23. But we have had an upsurge in over-income families applying. That's true. I think that speaks to the growing public will around universal pre-K and the fact that Durham has a strong commitment. And remember too that there are other children who also enter the public pre-K space through a variety of services. So we debated about whether we should share these numbers or not, given that they're incomplete. They're really, you know, it is hard to project. But we are, in terms of the budget, as I said, we're budgeting to expect about 30 fee-paying families. I see in the chat that Beth was asking about any data on where those children went who declined seats. We don't have exact data. We anecdotally know that a lot of families say we're just going to stay in our current child care arrangement, whether that's formal or informal care, based on their need for expanded hours. And I see that Ben wrote that, are they declining due to actual fee itself or the needing more time for care? It's very much a mixed bag. We do ask them to let us know why they're declining across the board, not just anyone who declines, whether they had a fee or not. We do ask them why they're declining, and there's a wide range of reasons. There are a number of people who say to us, I can't afford that fee when I also have to pay another $400 to $500 for wrap care. You know, the other thing to know about these numbers is a lot of times the the families that are higher income often apply earlier. So when you look at to Xavier's point about these numbers for 22, 23 that we provided you, those represent people who were more early adopters in the application process. Our application opened in February, and these numbers were pulled in early April. So it's important to know that a lot of early adopters are in there, and that families with more resources and income tend to fall into the early adopter category at a higher rate. Because there's a lot of documentation to submit, and they often have more flexible time. They can get all their information in and that type of thing. The thing that the key point is that the assigned fees, the 4% of family income that we charge, it does not in any way include the fees for wrap care. So any family who needs more than a 6.5-hour day would be paying for care beyond the parent copay. I see June put in the chat regarding the fact that with rising inflation and prices, the burden has become heavier on parents. Ben, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I'm trying to be a good student and raise my hand. I'm just curious, and I'm not advocating for anything at this point because I see a couple comments in the chat. This is a kind of a hard issue, I think, and I'm torn. I'm wondering though, do we need to look at policy amendments that might factor in if they need expanded care and maybe waiving fees for families, especially in the lower, in the lower income tiers? Could that be a possible method? Because I know we're trying to promote pre-K, but yet I get where families, I would have been in that situation, as a parent. I would have 6.5 hours when I got it for me, that's for sure. So I don't know. I'm thinking out loud, could that be a strategy, or do we want to talk about strategies to maybe find a balance in between there a little bit? Just food for thought.
There would be an administrative challenge around that.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, as you know,
I hear you.
but I do think some strategies you could consider. You could implement the parent fee at a higher income level. You did move it to 400% of federal poverty level a couple of years ago. You could raise the threshold for when parent fees kick in. You could lower the percent of the parent fee. Presently, we're charging 4%. We're calculating it at 4% of income. So that would be another option. You could we could think along those lines. If you felt that you wanted to have a parent fee, but you wanted to explore ways to make it more accessible for families to participate, we could consider those types of things.
I will say, even for people who would be considered middle class families, we're hearing from a lot of people who are really struggling. They lost a lot of savings. They lost a lot of their cushion when people a lot of folks having to leave the workforce during the pandemic. I mean, I do think people who might not have considered themselves to be struggling previously are still trying to recover a bit. And I've been hearing concerns about school lunch support, food support ending, challenges folks are facing getting food access in Durham already, concerns about childcare subsidy, parent co-pays coming back as well. I think there's also, I'm weighing a little bit, I think there is a benefit in this being a program that is embraced by folks from a wide variety of backgrounds in Durham. And I think when I'm looking at the numbers, we're talking about 30 seats out of 1,500 seats, right? And
yes,
there's a part of me that just feels like there is value in really building in buy-in, across a lot of folks who are really invested in the support of this program that is important.
So I'll throw out just a few thoughts relative to what you just mentioned, Beth. One of the things I've been trying to weigh is there a psychological value that, do people make a decision about the quality of the care that's being offered based on whether or not they pay for it in our capitalistic culture? And does it, my goal would be to have as diverse a program as possible while serving as many lower income, high need children as possible. And I'm sure probably all of us share that goal. So how do we do that? And are we more likely to get more buy-in from more middle-class families if they feel like because they're paying for it, it's a good program? Or are we driving them away? Is the thing that I'm trying to balance. And that I just don't know that my only concern about taking the fee away is that, are we communicating in any manner that that's what we're worth? To people who are used to that sort of like you get what you pay for kind of mentality. On the other hand, I can definitely say I want to be building an ethos of pre-K should be public school. Pre-K should be, you get free pre-K just like you get free kindergarten, because pre-K is that important. So I don't know if anybody can figure out those two competing. I see that, they're obviously in tension with each other. I'm really torn about this, but that's what I'm trying to weigh.
I'm also feeling torn about the, I'm feeling torn about that almost $12,000 a month, and how many additional children could be served with those additional funds. Like, I'm trying to do that math in my head. Like, I don't know, is it 5 more kids a month that that could have seats in the program with that parent fee? I think, yeah, I'm weighing that too. I do feel like my sense is that I think people feel more about like public pre-K like they feel about kindergarten, and like it's something their tax dollars are paying for. That it's, that it's not less quality because it's free. That's my sense. But I don't know, I'm weighing some competing things too.
It would be approximately 6 to 7 children when you calculate the reimbursement rate and the other fees that go in there. It'd be approximately 6 to 7 children would be supported, maybe 8, depending on the braided model, with those funds for the year. But again, the other piece of it to know is that when you look at the parent fee chart that's on the screen now, Drew pointed out that without the fee, the applications were up from the higher income families. We have not said that we have been advertising the program with the fee, because that's the way the program is marketed, because that's part of the framework for the program. So the families who are applying think there will be a fee. So I don't necessarily think that increase is based on the potential for no fee. I think it's more about the growth in awareness about the program, the outreach that's been done, and the public will that really has grown around this program. So I think that the increase is more in that category.
So Linda, could you given that we first seek to serve low income families, when the application process, and I know it's been a rolling application process because we didn't fill all of our seats last year, right?
Right, with the pandemic, we did not.
But if we get to the point that you all are sitting down to make the assignments, we have more slots than we have seats available. Can you talk a little bit about, so will you prioritize by income first, and then like how will that look?
Sure, I can talk you through that. So you'll recall that you asked us to, of course, to prioritize lower income families. So the way that the seating works, it's of course, like everything in the public pre-K space, is quite complex, but We have a braided system. Some seats have funding restrictions. So Head Start and NC Pre-K both have income restrictions unless the child qualifies from screening for other reasons. So what we are doing first is we have a family-centric approach. We look at the child, and we are, based on the criteria for each type of seat we have available, we are matching the child and family to whichever program can best meet their needs. So we're screening first for what the child needs. And that is not income-based, that's based on the screening from the child and the information we have at hand. Then we do have to look at income for certain types of seats because of those restrictions. But again, if the child qualifies based on screening for another reason, those income restrictions are null and void. So first we place children based on the criteria for each program. You'll recall that Durham Pre-K seats are the only seats that have no restrictions. So you've charged us with first filling those seats by greatest need, income need, and then opening it up to families who are over income. So for example, a family that's at, 300% of federal poverty level, they don't qualify for some of those other seats. They can only go into a Durham Pre-K seat. And you'll recall the way we're doing it is we place seats in an integrated way in classrooms. So our goal is to have each classroom be as diverse as possible. And so you can see it's quite complex because you may have 4 different kinds of seats in one classroom. But in the review process, we're first looking at the child's needs. There is a meeting of the partners that's held. Each partner is in the online application process, reviewing applications and identifying children that are eligible for their program. And then there's a selection process that takes place among the partners where children are identified for each seat. Then parents are offered a seat. Sometimes parents are not satisfied with the seat they are offered, and there is a process for them to request to move to a different school or to a different program. But it is quite complex. But those families that are well over income, let's say right now in this chart, there are 126 of those that are in the 400% category for fees. Right now, I will not have enough seats for all those families to participate in Durham Pre-K because of our funding stream. We do not have enough seats that are not braided. We have braided seats and we have full local funding seats. A family at or above 400% of federal poverty would typically be in a fully locally funded seat unless the child has some sort of identified need. Sorry if I made that more complicated than it needed to be, but basically, we do definitely prioritize and we try to fill as many requests as possible, but there will be some families who don't get a seat in Durham Pre-K this year. Did I answer your question, Beth? Sorry.
You did. I think that last piece
So
is what I was trying to make sure that I got. Like, where will those Durham locally funded seats be going?
We spread them across, right? Those locally funded seats, we try to spread them across classrooms all over Durham.
I guess I mean which like that they would be going to cover, like the first prioritization would be lower income folks. And so like I wanted to make sure that when we're talking about those slots, whether these were filling excess slots with folks of higher income or whether there were just not enough slots. And it sounds like there's just not enough slots.
No, there are not enough slots. We're not at our universal goal yet.
Y'all, I don't want to rush anybody. This is important, but I know we have another important topic coming up and I'm aware of time. If anyone feels prepared to make a motion, we would welcome it.
Hey,
had
so this
one-
is Kim.
I'm
I
sorry.
just have a question. Is this time sensitive? So like, when do we have to have an approved, motion for how we would handle?
It is, well, okay, first let me say that, if this group decided that you weren't ready to make a decision, then we would negotiate what to do. But in terms of the program's implementation, we had a lot more interface with families when we decided late. We had a lot more work when we decided late. So we have not offered seats for the 22-23 school year yet. We will be starting to offer those in June. And if we already know there will be a parent fee or won't be a parent fee for sure, then that will guide our seat offering. So today would be very helpful to have a decision. But last year you decided in the summer. The year before in the pandemic, we actually decided right as school was starting, because obviously the pandemic was was raging at that point. So it would be helpful to have a decision today, but obviously that would be up to y'all.
And so I'll just say, and probably because I'm really new to the conversation, I'm not prepared today to decide either way. I would just need to do a little more research and thinking about this, but that's not to say that the group can't move forward with calling for a motion.
Thank you for the input.
I'll just remind the group that this is a decision we have to make every year. It would get sticky to go back and forth. I appreciate that, but whatever we decide today is not final. We'll be revisiting it next year again.
But Linda, is it correct that if we don't decide anything today, we'll revert back to having the fees?
Yes.
So absent action today, the
There will be
fees
a
will
fee.
be implemented again.
Yes,
that
there will
right?
be a fee. Yes, that's correct. There'll be a fee until you vote otherwise for this school year. And we have been, during this application cycle, we have presented the program with fee information, and we do all of our website materials, everything, I mean, certainly the community in the know is aware that the fee's been waived the last 2 years, but we have in no way indicated that will continue, because that was a temporary motion that y'all passed. So if you don't do anything today, we will continue moving forward with the fees until you decide differently.
Yeah, I'm going to throw a motion out here just to get it on the table for discussion. And I know we have time because I have a 11:30 meeting myself. So I'm going to motion that we reduce the fees to 2% for fiscal year 23. And I'll throw that out there to see if it lives or dies.
Thank you, Ben, for that motion.
Sure.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Who was that seconded?
Beth Messersmith.
Beth. Thank you, Beth. Discussion? I'll say, to me, that sounds like, I mean, it's a literal middle ground. And it's sort of easing people, back into the idea of paying something. Makes sense as a compromise, given that we're so torn, obviously.
That was a hard
Any other
motion.
Okay. If you're in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. All those opposed, please raise your hand. I think it passed unanimously. Thanks, y'all. That was a hard one.
It is a hard one, and we will report back to you, obviously. At our next meeting in September, we will have, more information about the status of actual families, and we will prioritize reporting back to you for your analysis. Okay, Katie, you want to move on? Okay, so we'll try to, we're being aware of the time, we will pay attention to, but this is also another issue that requires a vote. So you'll recall that our licensing policy in Durham Pre-K is that we work with programs that are regulated through the North Carolina Quality Rating System and are at a minimum 5-star licensed programs for Durham Pre-K. In terms of our policies, again, you'll recall that throughout this entire program, when there's not a specific policy in place that governance has set, then we use the NC Pre-K rules to apply to Durham Pre-K. This program overlays and braids with NC Pre-K, and at a minimum, we meet those standards. So if there's not a specific policy, then we do follow NC Pre-K policies. So again, we do have a specific policy that requires a 5-star license to be in place in order to be selected to provide Durham Pre-K services. Next slide. So I'm going to give the floor to Monty Griggs, who's our Senior Director of Quality Enhancement Initiatives for Early Learning, and she's going to briefly talk you through the licensing process and how it applies when a program is new. So Monty, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks. So in North Carolina, it is state law that any full-day program that serves more than 2 children has to be licensed. And so when a program opens, there's a pre-licensing process they have to go through. And it begins with attending a pre-licensing workshop to learn about the licensing regulations and all the steps of licensing. This is where a program would complete all of their inspections, health inspection, fire inspection, building inspection. They also are assigned a lead licensing consultant for the area who will help them through this process. In addition, a program can also have a technical assistant specialist helping them navigate this process. During this pre-licensing time, as they're looking to apply for a license, the staff members who will be working in the program do their criminal record background checks to get approved and qualified to work in an early childhood setting. And at this point, once all the inspections are passed, staff have been qualified, the Division of Child Development and Early Education issues them a temporary license. Katie, can you go to the next slide? So, back one more. There we go. So all centers are required to be on a temporary license for 6 months. During this 6 months period, they receive announced and unannounced visits from the lead licensing consultant, state licensing consultant. This helps to establish a compliance history. It helps to check to make sure that the center is following those regulations that they are supposed to meet as part of licensing. They receive support from the licensing consultant if the licensing consultant sees that there's something that they're not following through on. In addition, if the program has a technical assistant specialist, the specialist would be in the center on a regular basis, helping them to implement the regulations and to also begin to build that quality aspect. During this time, staff, their education is evaluated. To begin with, they just qualify based on criminal background check. But during this time, the education of the staff is evaluated by the state to determine where they fall on the education scale for licensing. And then the center during this time, if they are looking to go beyond above a 1-star, they also begin to work on the environment rating scale, which is the assessment the state uses to determine quality, and it plays a key role in what your star rating is. During this time, this is a heavy period of technical assistance if the center has some additional support, because we want to make sure that the center is not just, okay, I have to make sure the children wash their hands. I have to make sure I have these materials, but we want to make sure that the teachers and the center director understand the why. Why is that important? Because we don't want them just trying to get a score. We want them to understand the importance and build in that foundation of quality. Towards the end of the 6 months, the lead licensing consultant will submit a request for the site to receive their environment rating scale assessment. This assessment is done on different age levels. So if the center just has preschool, then they only have to have the preschool assessment. But if they also have infants and toddlers in their center, they would be required to also have an infant toddler assessment. And then the average of those scores from those classrooms would give them their overall assessment average. Katie, you can go to the next slide. So at the end of the 6 months, in North Carolina, we have the star rating system where a center could get 1 to 5 stars. Those star ratings are based on a couple of major components. One is the program standard points. So there's 7 points possible. And where these 7 points are determined is determined by ratio in the classroom, space, policies that they have, like their family handbooks, their staff handbooks, and then a big portion of the program standard points come from the environment rating scale that they had to do. Basically, 2 points come from the ratio, the space, etc. The rest of the 5 points, the additional 5 points, come from that rated assessment. Then sites are evaluated based on education points. They determine how many points the site administrators have, how many points the lead teachers have, and then the assistant teachers. And then a certain percentage, 75% in each of those categories, have to have a higher education to get higher points. So those two combined, let's say they get a 7 on program standards and a 7 on education points, that gets you to 14. The state wanted to throw in an extra point to make the range 13 to 15 for a 5-star. So programs can also get a quality standard point. This is awarded when a site does some extra quality initiatives or enhancements, like lower ratios, more enhanced space, using an improved curriculum. Will get sites an extra point. And in Durham centers already have a leg up because by county ordinance, Durham centers already have to have that enhanced space. So they automatically get that extra point, quality point. And then you can just see the range of the stars. 1 to 3 is a 1-star, 4 to 6 is a 2. Our programs focus on 5-star, which would be a range of 13 to 15 points. But I'm happy to answer any questions on licensing and what happens when a center opens and has to go through this temporary license process.
Okay, Katie, will you move to the next slide? I'm going to speed us up a little bit. Thank you, Monty. And we have great resources on our team around licensing. So those of you who really would like to learn in depth more about the quality rating system in North Carolina, please think about our team as a resource because it is an important system. It's not a perfect system, but it is a strong system that has moved the early childhood system forward in North Carolina. So the background about this, the purpose of us sharing all of that with you was to bring to your attention that in school year 2023, coming up this fall, Durham Public Schools is going to open the Lime Farm Elementary School, and they have pledged to have 2 preschool classrooms in that school. What we will say to you is that if you're not familiar with that school, it will be located at 906 Scott King Road, and that's in the 27713 school zip code in Durham. It is in South Durham. And if you'll go to the next slide, Katie. When we say the school is located in a high need zone, what we mean by that is that we have high demand in South Durham from families applying for public pre-K across the board. And we have a shortage of seat availability. So when we think about zip codes in Durham, in this chart, South Durham zip codes are generally considered like 27703, 07, 27713. Those are kind of some big residential areas that have a large number of applications and a shortage of seats in South Durham. Lion Farm is located in the 27713 zip code. If you'll go to the next slide. So Durham Public Schools plans to open Lion Farm with a temporary license in place. This is different. This is new. In the past, Durham Public Schools has not opened schools with their temporary license. You'll recall, many of you know, that public schools in North Carolina are not required to be licensed to operate preschool classrooms. So they can operate their preschool classrooms without going through licensure. In order to access NC pre-K funding, as well as Durham pre-K funding, and some other resources that become available to them, they have gone through the licensing process for a good number of their classrooms in Durham Public Schools. Not all, but many. In our current policy, we require that a program have a 5-star license in place. You'll remember when Whitted opened a few years ago, they did not open with their temporary license. They felt they needed to get the school open, and they did pledge to get licensed, and Whitted is licensed, but they waited a longer period of time after the school opened to initiate the licensing process. And so therefore, once they became licensed at Whitted, they were able to pull together some additional resources. Because the public schools are not required to be licensed, we wanted to bring to you, if you'll go to the next slide, Katie. We wanted to bring to you a consideration based on the fact that we have a shortage of seats in South Durham and high demand. And because Durham Public Schools is going to open the school under the temporary license, the way our current policy is, we would not be able to place Durham pre-K seats at Lion Farm until after the 6-month period when they get their full 5-star license. We propose that for your consideration that because the public schools can operate without a license by law, and because they have agreed to open with their temporary license, which means they will have had all their inspections and they will be under the purview of the state regulations during that 6-month period. We wanted to bring it to you to consider allowing the public schools to be a part of Durham pre-K under a temporary license, as long as they They participate in our technical assistance program. They would sign a technical assistance contract from the Durham Pre-K team that they would continue with at a minimum until they were fully licensed. And of course, they must obtain their 5-star license. We want to bring this forth for you to consider given the shortage of seats in South Durham and our strong partnership and collaboration with Durham Public Schools to provide services.
I think
So
this
Sam.
makes a ton of sense. What you just said, the way you laid it out, Linda, made a lot of sense to me. It seems like it will be very disruptive to try to move them into the program in the middle of a school year after their 6 months. And I don't think that the benefit of that outweighs the tremendous cost of trying to engage with them in the middle of a school year. And so I would be happy to support this policy change.
Thanks, Anna.
We can have discussion after a motion if you'd might like to make a motion, Anna.
Sure, I'm happy to make a motion in support of this policy change, the proposed language here.
I second.
I
Xavier.
believe that was Ben seconding.
No, that was
Xavier.
Xavier.
Never mind. Thank you, Xavier.
So when we call, when you
Discussion,
do, when you do call for a vote, we'll need to, Dr. Hardy will need to recuse herself from the vote.
Further discussion?
I have a question. Is this a waiver of the policy for a certain period of time? Or is it going to be a set policy change, assuming the school keeps adding new buildings?
Well, that would be up to you. What we imagined it as a policy change, which is why we did say that they must obtain their 5-star license. In the distant past, there have been instances where schools initiated the licensure process, but then due to circumstances, they halted the licensing process. And so this would only apply to schools that did get their temporary license and it was in place and then completed and obtained a 5-star license. But we were viewing it as a policy change and not a unique to this one situation.
So that
But
seems
you
to also.
could make it unique.
I was just going to say, it seems to also address a question that I see in the chat from Drew about asking if this would be for a maximum of 1 year. Drew, do you mean this would be a policy change for 1 year, or would it be extended to Lion Farm for 1 year?
The latter.
Okay.
I'm sort of assume that we don't want Durham pre-K programs sort of limping along forever with temporary licenses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would be our expectation. I mean, typically programs do move into full licensure within 6 to 7 months. However, things do come up and happen. And if for some reason the process was halted, then we would not be able to continue to work with them past that school year.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, thanks, everybody.
Okay, and then we'll note that Dr. Hardy would be recused from voting. Thank you very much. Katie, you can go to the next slide. So we are finished with the voting component of our meeting, and we just have a few things to finish up, and we will finish on time. Just wanted to update you about the RapCare pilot. You know that we talked about it last month. We talked about the RapCare report, which will be out shortly. And we did put in our budget request to the county for consideration for funds for piloting of before and after school support to to build up and build capacity around RAP. And we are cautiously optimistic that there will be some funds available to do this. We plan to hopefully pilot 40 children to access support for RAP, and we will work closely with our local DSS department to coordinate and assure that we're working together and not to duplicate services. But currently, you'll recall that we shared with you the last meeting that there are approximately 50 support opportunities for NC pre-K seats in RAP for families who are income eligible, but we have not had funding available across the other programs. So this is an income-based financial support that we will be seeking to offer for RAP care because it is a barrier identified in our equity plan. So we just wanted to update you that we do hope to implement some portion of the RAP Care pilot this upcoming school year, pending funding. Okay, you can move to the next slide. So I wanted to mention to you that we're going to talk about how you can access the portal in just a few minutes, but it is time for us to submit nominations to governance for next school year. We do know we want to thank Anna Gassman Pines for her service on our Durham Pre-K Governance Committee since the very beginning. She's been with us, and she did share with me that she, lucky her, will be taking a sabbatical next year in her work at Duke. And so she will be transitioning off of our governance committee, and we want to thank her for her service very much so. And that will be one of the seats we'll be seeking to fill. And I'm very jealous about the sabbatical. That's so cool. But there is a nomination. You can nominate someone. Our process, just to remind you, this is not a board. Obviously, it's a committee, and it's an advisory committee that certainly plans to make policy. But for representation on governance, what we do is we submit nominations to the county manager's office, and the county manager's office reviews and lets us know which nominated members will be able to join governance. And so we're asking that you submit any nominations you have by June 15th. There is an application form that you'll be able to access in the governance portal, or I can email it to you if you prefer. We do contact those nominees and talk through with them and work, get information, biographical information and information about their desire to serve that we put together in a packet that we will forward to the county manager around the end of June. So we ask you to submit your nominations by June 15th. And if you will, you can email them to Melinda Rodriguez or to me, either one, and we will work with the team to move those forward. I really can't say enough about the membership of governance. We've been so fortunate with all the contributions and, people like Anna who've been with us from the very beginning. I think you know that we've put a lot into trying to grow this group and have this group meet around meaningful issues and really guide this program from infancy into the future, where we hope it will truly become a universal program. And so the governance membership, our goal is for it to be a thoughtful group that is representative of our community and can really contribute to this work. So we appreciate your consideration of people that you're aware of, and we're always striving to make sure that governance is representative of our very diverse community. Next slide, Katie. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenna to talk to you about our new portal, which is where you will be able to access information and those forms and that type of thing. But before we talk about the portal, I want to address, I just saw that Beth, you put in the chat, for recruiting parent members. Beth was asking if we prefer folks who've been through the program or if those who currently have eligible age children. Ideally, we would like to recruit 2 at least 2 new parent members. They do not have to have had a child in the program or a child that's currently eligible for the program, but that is certainly also an asset. If they have young children, obviously that is an asset. But we're very open depending upon what people's interest in serving is. In terms of going back to membership, well, ideally we would love to recruit a member of the business community. That's we could reuse more input from the business community. We want to replace Anna with hopefully with another Duke University representative, 1 or 2 parent representatives that we would like to recruit. And then we also will be recruiting another early education director from a non-Durham pre-K program. And Kate was asking, can you self-nominate? Yes, people can self-nominate for sure. And we will be posting on the Durham pre-K website at large, the opportunity for people to self-nominate. But we do also appreciate input from this group. And again, it's a process whereby the applications will go to the county manager's office. We will, provide information about the representation from different sectors on this group, and we'll work with the county manager's office in forming the committee. New members will join at our next, hopefully will join our next meeting in September. So it is a little bit different from a board of directors. Any other questions about that nomination process? Okay. So Jenna, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I know that you'll be able to speak quickly around the portal.
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll do a really quick walkthrough. So first, I just want to thank Katie for putting this together. You did a great job. So this is intended to be a one-stop shop for all of the resources that you need as a governance member. So this is the layout that you'll see for upcoming meeting information. You'll just see the agenda, the notes that we're going to be reviewing for approval, the DPK update, and then the link to the Zoom meeting. You can go to the next slide, Katie. You'll also see meeting resources for the current fiscal year. So this is the layout for that. You'll see the recording of the meetings, and then to the right, you'll see a link to the agenda and the notes from that meeting, the approved notes. Next slide. Thank you. As Linda mentioned, you will see the governance nomination application in the portal. So we just have a link to supporting documents that you may need to use or reference throughout the year, including the bylaws, conflict of interest policy, and that nomination form. And we'll probably be adding more documents to this as we continue developing the portal and see what the needs are. You can go to the next slide. Lastly, we also have an archive of previous year's meetings. So you'll see the agenda and notes all linked there. I think that's it. Oh, and following this meeting, you will be receiving an email with login information. It's right through our website, but we will send that out separately. You'll just have a username and password.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jenna, and thank you to Katie for putting this together on our website. And to be clear, all of our information we make public. And so it is on our website in different places for the community to access. It's just that we were trying to make it convenient for you for it to be all in one place that you can easily find and access if you ever need to. So that password will get you into that space, and hopefully we will make the portal respond to your needs now and in the future. So thank you. Next slide. We're wrapping up. Just to remind you that we did set our governance meetings for next school year. You should have received a meeting invite already for all of these dates. And if you didn't, let us know and we can work with you on getting those to you. And we did send out separate invitations asking you to, if you could, to potentially hold for a meeting in July and August. If we do have to do that, those meetings, it would be either or. We wouldn't be having 2 meetings unless there was a dire emergency. Those would be short agenda focus items that had to be voted on before school started. So we would only invoke those dates if needed. And last year we did have to have an August meeting because of a variety of circumstances that came up. But the way we're moving at this point, I don't anticipate that we'll need these, but we did ask you to hold them just in case. Next slide. We're at the end and we're actually 1 minute over. I apologize. Lee, I'm turning it back over to you.
Thanks, Linda. I'm not claiming that minute. I believe that's your fault.
It is.
Yeah. So I just put in the chat that the website portal looks just great and it's going to make it really easy for members to keep up. And it's just indicative of the way y'all run everything. You are so organized and you do such a good job of keeping us on track and explaining things so well. I know everybody really appreciates it. Thanks everybody for coming today. I won't keep you 1 minute longer. Thanks for participating. Bye. Have a great day.
I always try so hard to finish on time. I'm sorry we went over a smidge.
You got it. You got just one little against you.
I know, just a
Yeah.
just a little X mark
But
against it.
basically A+.